Yesterday morning at 2:41 a.m. at General Eisenhower's headquarters, General Jodl, the representative of the German High Command, and of Grand Admiral Dönitz, the designated head of the German state, signed the act of unconditional surrender of all German land, sea, and air forces in Europe to the Allied expeditionary forces and simultaneously to the Soviet High Command. Hostilities will end officially at 1 minute after midnight tonight, Tuesday, the 8th of May. But in the interest of saving lives, the ceasefire began yesterday to be sounded along all the fronts. The German war is therefore at an end. We may allow ourselves a brief period of rejoicing. Today is Victory in Europe Day.
This was the moment we'd all been waiting for. Enormous crowds had gathered outside the House and all over the centre of London to hear the end of the war in Europe officially announced by the Prime Minister. True, VE Day had been anticipated by the people of London, who'd done a bit of unofficial celebrating the previous evening. But this was the real moment, and this is how Winston Churchill ended his broadcast.
Advance, Britannia! Long live the cause of freedom! God save the King!
After the
Hello. As you may know, this is an important week in the history of England and the world. On the 8th of May 1945, that's 75 years ago, World War II in Europe ended. Now, an important part of how the war ended in Europe was a place called Bletchely Park. Now that was top secret. Not very many people knew during the Second World War what went on there, or even that it existed. So, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes going through some of the important things that you need to know about World War II and Bletchley Park. Bletchley Park. You would have probably heard of someone called Alan Turing. He was very important to the war effort, and he helped, amongst other people, for the war to end early. However, there were lots of other people that worked at Bletchley Park. At one stage it was thought, but we don't know exactly because it's all official secrets, but it was thought that up to 10,000 people worked at or for Bletchley Park. Now, the person that we see in front of us is a gentleman called Tommy Flowers. He was an electrical engineer, and he was really important because he built, almost single-handedly, the Colossus by himself at Bletchley Park. And that was the computer that followed on from Alan Turing's bomb. So, remember this, Tommy Flowers, a really important person. When he first put together the idea for his machine called the Colossus, he had to build it out of his own money because people didn't think that it would work. What we are looking at here is a picture of the Colossus from the Second World War. Remember, the Colossus is the computer that Tommy Flowers created, he built, designed, so that it could crack some of the messages from the enemy, from their Enigma machines. Now, the Colossus was much, much faster than the previous computer, the bombe, B-O-M-B-E, and so what that meant was that the messages could be deciphered much faster, and so action could then be taken much faster as well. Think about that. That's one of the first modern computers that you're looking at on the screen. Now, this gentleman in front of us is Alan Turing. Of course, he was really important to the war effort. It was his ideas that helped to get people motivated to crack the secret messages that were being sent, especially during the first half of the Second World War, before the Colossus was developed to make it even better, even faster. Now, Alan Turing, even though he was really important, because it was all under the Official Secrets Act, after the war, it was all kept very quiet. And unfortunately, he only lived until the 7th of June, 1954. he's now thought of as one of the, if not the master, the father of modern day computing. Just think of that. Think of your Bill Gateses and so on. Yeah. If you worked at Bletchley Park during the Second World War, chances are you'd have worked in a building like that. A bit like a shed, really, a giant shed. All of the real work went on inside of these sheds, all of the decoding, all of the building of the bomb and then the Colossus, all the discussions between Tommy Flowers and Alan Turing and all of the other people that took messages and decoded messages, went off to Whitehall in London to discuss strategy. So, just think, some people spent 5 or 6 years working in a building like that as part of the war effort. Now, it's thought, and no one can really measure it, but it's thought that the efforts of Bletchley Park helped shorten the war by between 2 and 4 years. And listen to this figure. They think that the efforts at Bletchley Park helped to save about 14 million lives. Just think of that. That's a quarter of the population of the UK. 14 million people. Goodness me.